It depends on whether I'm getting a train or not. So this
I thought you were
morning...
going to say it depends on which child.
Which I know.
The purpose of a plan is to have thought things through. It doesn't mean you're actually going to do the plan. It creates thought processes.
Hello and welcome to Women in the Driving Seat, where we take the time to shine a spotlight on the wonderful women in automotive. This week we're talking about supporting EV drivers. But first, the bios. Vicky Edmonds. Vicky is the CEO of EVA England, joining the role in January after nearly 20 years in government, including 7 as a senior official leading UK transport decarbonisation policy. She has 2 young daughters and loves spending time with them, her husband and her black Labrador. Her other great passion, after EVs, of course, is open water swimming. Melanie Shuffle-Botham. Having worked in various marketing and tech roles for 20 years in big US corporates and startups, Melanie really found her purpose when she came into the electric car industry and co-founded Zapmap at 40. It was a chance opportunity which she grabbed as a prosaic way of getting back into work or getting out of the house with 3 children under 5. Now, 15 years on, she is fully immersed in the industry with Zapmap and passionate about helping EV drivers and businesses embrace and love public charging. You've got your work cut out, but we'll come to that, I'm sure. Melanie lives in Bristol with her husband, who she says is supportive and resilient, and remaining teenager, plus Juno, the dog. Generally always on the go, she is in her happy place, walking on a coastal path with the prospect of a swim and pub lunch in view. Looks like we're all going swimming after this.
Yeah.
Excellent. Welcome to you both. Good to have you here. Okay, let's get started. Vicky, you're up first. What plates have you been spinning and what balls have you been dropping this week?
Oh, lots of dropped balls this week.
Good, tell us all.
So first few weeks back at school, including back to school in Westminster. So just we've got a lot going on in the EV sector, particularly government policy, parliamentary work, where we're trying to ramp up engagement with MPs and peers who are back at the moment. Make sure that they know who we are, make sure that they know that they need to represent drivers' needs as well as industry when they think about EV policy and regulation, trying to get back in touch with others in the sector. We've got our EVA England driver survey out at the moment, which is in its last week, where we are trying to survey as many drivers as possible to see what they think about EVs. And then on top of that, actual back to school for the children, which means, for example, this morning we forgot everything like guitar for a guitar lesson, forgot about when my daughters had an early lesson. So yeah, family balls are definitely dropping at the moment.
And can I say on that, are you one of those mothers who goes, oh my God, they forgot the guitar, sod it, they're just going to have to deal with it? Or are you one of those mothers who goes, right, I'll drop my first meeting, I'm going to have to turn around and go back to school, get it?
It depends on whether I'm getting a train or not. So this
I
morning...
thought you were going to say it depends on which child.
Which I know. So this morning, forget it. Like I had to catch a train into London, so no way could I go back and get it. So she will have to handle that herself at school.
It's resilience.
Exactly.
Excellent, good. And Melanie, what about you? Balls spinning, plates dropping, or other way around, whichever?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, just sort of a lot spinning. I think a bit like you, Vicky, feels like beginning of September is very much sort of back into planning, back into getting full on after the summer.
It is mental, isn't it?
It is. It's sort of something about it. I mean, we World EV Day yesterday. We all 3 of us were there celebrating a campaign that at Zapmap we've been working on, the destination charging campaign, and that's really about focusing on that sort of slightly unloved area of public charging, which is supporting people when they're either away from home or at an attraction or destination, doing lots of strategy planning, about to launch our latest Insights product, which is all about charging utilisation, which we might get onto. And then on a personal level, my middle son's just off to university on Saturday. So going up to Glasgow, so quite a big trip and getting things organised for him.
Wow, if you forget a guitar from Glasgow, there's no coming back there, is there?
That's it. There are shops. And he doesn't play the guitar.
Yeah. Good, excellent. And staying with you for a moment, Melanie and Zapmap. So why did you co-found Zapmap? What was that about?
Well, I mean, as I said in my intro, it was a little bit of a sort of a chance encounter, if you like. I haven't been an eco warrior all my life. However, I feel I am now incredibly passionate about EVs. I had this opportunity to go and work with a guy called Ben Lane, my co-founder, on a website called nextgreencar.com, which was all about
Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't know if you remember that, but it was
Yeah.
all about looking at cars across all powertrains, so from LPG, CNG, petrol, diesel, plug-in hybrids, electrics, and looking them on a life cycle rating them from 0 to 100, and then letting people sort of work out what was the best option. And then in about 2012, it became clear that electric were going to have its day. They've had a few skirmishes before, but 2012, the Leaf came out, the Renault Zoe came out, the BMW i3 came out, and this is going to become mass market. And then it was the obvious next step: where are people going to be able to charge? So we literally started a spreadsheet. Where are all the chargers? Desk research, and popped it up in our nextgreencar.com, and then over the next year or so, it became the most popular page on our site. And we thought, aha, we've got something here. Called it Zapmap, and then created another digital property. Then the app started to have relationships with all the CPOs. And now, obviously, it's a totally different. It's no longer a spreadsheet-driven product. We're fully technical product.
So we're kind of saying very little of this was planned.
It was happen chance, I think. Yeah. No, I think that's what's happened. A lot of things in my life.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. And Vicky, tell us a bit about EVA England. There are a lot of EV, electric vehicle related bodies springing up in the UK. What's EVA England about?
I agree. There's a lot of us around, actually, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I have in explaining what's our role in the sector. So EVA England is part of a wider global network of EVAs. So many countries have an electric vehicle association. So there are 4 in the UK. There's England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, and we work closely together as a unified group of EVAs. And our job is to represent the driver, the person, the consumer, independent of manufacturing and industry interests. So we pride ourselves on that independence. We pride ourselves on being able to say, look, we love our EVs. We know they work really well for us, but they don't actually work for everyone. So there are changes that need to be made to make the system work better. And I think that's where we're slightly different to some of the other organisations. We're not funded by industry, although we do have partners who support our work, but we like to work with lots of small partners rather than 1 or 2 big kind of sponsors, so that we retain that independence and that consumer voice, and we try to rattle the cages perhaps a little bit more than some of the other organisations actually say, look, this isn't working, like we need to do more. And I think that's the kind of USP that we're developing as an organisation in partnership with the other EVAs.
And so what you talk about rattling cages, primarily government cages,
and industry. So I think as a driver myself, sometimes I find it very frustrating when I know that for some people this system is really difficult and that you feel like people aren't necessarily listening. And I was surprised when I came across from government to EVA England how low down the priority list the consumer voice can be above kind of some of the other voices in the sector. So it's sort of saying, look, actually, we need to work together. So, we're being perhaps a little bit more disruptive on LinkedIn, where somebody's, talking about things that necessarily aren't that good for the consumer. With government, we work we have a good relationship with government, but we're not scared of saying, we need to do more on this, and we need to work harder on this, and that is helping. Like, I think sometimes raising the profile of what drivers need and being a little bit more assertive about it is really good. And since I've been here, we've rattled a lot about cross-pavement technologies because they're a really big way of bringing charging costs down for people without driveways. And since then, we've seen the government's sort of £25 million cross-pavement fund. There's work going on legislation to just make it easier for people to access cross-pavement solutions. We're helping with guidance around that. Similarly for workplace charging. So there's lots of little things that need to happen that can make this work better for drivers, and that's where we sit and that's where we try to help.
Did EVA England bring you in because of your experience with government? Because it must be hugely helpful for any organisation who needs to, as part of their work, lobby government or rattle a few cages, or at least understand how government works. As you say, we all met each other yesterday in Parliament for the launch of the Bon Voy Charge destination charging campaign. But even just physically walking through the corridors of Parliament, I was like, where the hell am I? This is mind-boggling. I'm lost already. And it seemed to me like a bit of a metaphor for how government itself might be, and that you desperately need somebody who has some experience on the inside. And that's where you come in.
Yeah, I I think having been in government, I definitely have an advantage in understanding, well, both the difference between government and MPs. I was saying to my board the other day, I'm astounded by the number of people who don't realise the difference between what an MP is and what a minister is.
Yes, absolutely.
And just understanding some of those simple differences. Yes, understanding the Houses of Parliament and how to navigate them, how to work with MPs, how to try to get your voice up the agenda, how to work with government officials who are actually kind of beavering away on the details of policy, I think is definitely an advantage. But I think when you're head of an organisation, you can take it in any direction you want, and that's definitely my strength. So we probably have taken it in a much more detailed kind of looking at unpicking some of the smaller areas that make a difference to drivers rather than perhaps talking about some of the bigger areas. But I think that's a really useful place for us to sit right now. As you said, it's a big sector. There's a lot of organisations and there are other people doing perhaps some of the more public-facing kind of EVs are great stuff. And there does need to be somebody who understands how legislation works, how to get changes to legislation, how to work with MPs and peers, how to work with government officials. And I think I guess drawing on my expertise, that's the direction that I'm taking the organisation in.
Yeah, I just think you're in hot demand. We could do the whole podcast series on that alone. Okay, and back to Zapmap. What have the major challenges been in getting it to the point it's at, and what are the kind of challenges, stroke opportunities going forward? What are the next things?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's started a business from sort of 2 people going up to 50 people, there's just inherent challenges in that. There's advantages being just 2 of you because you create the product, you decide the product, you make it all happen. And when there's 50 people, you absolutely have to step back and let other people do a lot of the more expert people do that. But I think there's also a disadvantage. Yeah, there's disadvantages only being a couple because you have to do absolutely everything yourself. So it's been fantastic just it's been a long time now, 11 years, going from when it was just Ben and I, sort of scaling up through a couple of investment rounds, building the team, bringing in people who are just much more expert than I am in all the different areas. So that's been great. I think in terms of the market challenges, the initial challenge was to get the charge point operators, who back in the day were very protective of their data, to get them to say, actually, it does make sense to aggregate all this data in one place so EV drivers can find all the charge points, not just mine. So that was hurdle number 1 to get over. I think then latterly a similar hurdle to get over, which I'm pleased to say we are now over, was around getting the payment layer. So they say, yep, you can have our data. We're happy for people to understand is a charge point live charging or out of service, but we want to do all the payment ourselves, or it's fine with contactless. And now we have also added that payment layer so you can pay via the app or with the charging card. And I think, that's such a critical thing for drivers, isn't it? This whole issue of I've got to download another app and all of that. So that's where aggregated payment really, really works. So that's been a big challenge, but I feel we're sort of over the hump of that. Yeah, and I guess as creating a business as opposed to an organisation, the challenge is always, that consumers need your product or businesses need your product, but then how do you make a product and monetize it so that you can continue to invest and grow? So that was a challenge. Initially, we funded it via advertising because that's what we knew in our publishing world. And since then, we've developed a number of revenue streams, subscriptions, so value add service on the app, payment, advertising on the app, and then we're also effectively a data platform. So we aggregate all this data, EV data, but also the charging data, so locations, utilization, pricing, and then we sell that to other people in the industry so that they can work out their own business plans in terms of how to make a profitable charge point or where the energy is.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because listening to you, it's that route from startup to established business, whatever that business ends up being, and on the way, it's how far, it's the opportunity to diverge from that original. Zapmap was set up to provide mapping for public charging network. To, as you go along, there's this opportunity here, and actually, if we want to do that, we need to expand our business in this direction slightly, and it becomes a thing that perhaps you didn't envisage when you set out.
No, absolutely, and I think that's what's fun about business, isn't it? Or any organisation, you can make a plan, but my philosophy is the purpose of a plan is to have thought things through. It doesn't mean you're actually going to do the plan. It creates thought processes. So I agree. I think that's good point.
Do you find yourself having to, you might start off with a core skill set of, I don't know, you set up a startup and you're an accountant and that's your skill set, but then you've got to become a marketeer, a PR person, a chief financial officer, a tech officer. You've got to understand content. You've got is that
yeah, and actually I like that. I mean, I'm
Right.
definitely someone who's not a specialist. I like being on top of all of the different elements. So, you know, I always wanted to do that. So actually I enjoy that. But it has to be said, after a while, it gets a little bit tiresome having to do everything. And, you know, people would say to me, you know, I'd go on holiday and people say, oh, you know, you can definitely go on holiday. And I'm like, yes, but I've got to do payroll. You know, I've got to make sure this invoice is chased up. Whereas now, you know, that's all sorted out by other much more expert people.
Yeah, yeah. I think the one area of setting up a business I would hope would be people. You know, just the thought of employing
dealing
people.
with them.
Yeah, and you know, and I can't deal with HR issues, and I don't want to deal with hiring and firing, and I don't want to deal with all of these things. Like, I just want to do the job that I wanted to do.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is true. But no, we've got a lovely HR person, so that solves.
Oh, there you go. Rule number one: employ a good HR person. And guys, I just wanted to touch on, you know, what we were all like yesterday with this launch of the BVRLA's Bonvoy Charge destination charging campaign, because it, you know, what's fascinating. I spoke very briefly yesterday and said, I hold my hand up. Destination charging had kind of, although I have been a user of it, you know, I've always thought if I go to a hotel, have they got a charging point there? It kind of escaped my notice as a journalist. You know, we've all been so transfixed on home charging because of the cost benefits, and we need to get everyone who's got a driveway to get a home charger. And otherwise, it's about public charging and you know, this perceived lack of charging points and are they rapid or ultra rapid, and what's the pricing? And no one has really talked properly about destination charging, feels to me. But of course, having been there yesterday, I'm thinking, of course, this is essential, and it will have a huge knock-on effect on actually what we need the public charging network to look like. Vicky, where are you at with the whole destination charging?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, when the campaign was, we get a lot of drivers saying to us, why are you joining with that campaign? Like, that's not the most important thing. It's cost of public charging. I said, well, we talk about that as well, but actually, as a driver, you need the whole system to work. So at the moment, I think it is an overlooked part of the sector because everyone's really focused on the kind of, I call them the en route journeys, the kind of commuting journeys, the longer distance journeys, making sure there's enough rapid chargers around to feed that route. Lots of people focused on kind of residential charging, which is a really difficult area. But for those of us who go on holiday in the UK, it's incredibly frustrating when you turn up to somewhere where you're going to spend the whole day. And it would be great to have a cheap charge because destination charges are often slower, so they're often cheaper. And there's no charge point there. And you know, I had a weekend away camping with the family recently, and it's probably the first poor charging experience we've had for a really long time because it's the first time we've sort of really gone for destination charging and needed it, whereas previously we're kind of en route to a holiday cottage or something. We were camping and there was no charge point where we camped. There was no charge point at the car parks we were using all day whilst we were on the beach. So, you know, it's really important to focus on the whole sector and not forget about it. The whole system has to work because people buy the cars for different reasons. And at the moment, probably one of the biggest reasons people aren't buying the cars is because they're worried about being able to charge away from home.
Very interesting. We are halfway through, which means it's already time for the pit stop questions. Quick fire questions. You haven't seen them before. They're just going to land on you, and I would appreciate no prevarication, ladies. Melanie, let's go with you. Are you ready?
Yep.
Fleetwood Mac or Phil Collins?
Phil Collins.
Quite
Controversial.
right. Quite right. Didn't see either live in concert. Gutted. Print or digital?
Digital.
Wrong, but never mind. 22 kilowatts or 150 kilowatts?
150.
Charge to 80% or charge to full?
Oh, 80%.
It's
Got to
a
be
controversial
80%.
subject. Charles Dickens or Jane Austen?
Dickens.
Theory or reality?
Reality.
Yes, you strike me as a reality kind of woman. Vicky? Helicopter parent or free range?
Free range.
Small battery or big battery?
Small.
Yeah, for sure. Charge at home or in public? Not destination.
Yeah, destination. At home.
Staycation or long haul holiday?
Staycation.
Boots or trainers?
Trainers.
Desktop or laptop?
Laptop.
There we go. Done. Back in we go. Vicky, back to you. Do you think we are repeating the same old problems as an industry when it comes to listening and responding to drivers as we've done with petrol or diesel? And I ask this because I've been incredibly frustrated to see us essentially repeating the same old behavioural patterns in so many other areas. Like we had a chance to talk differently about electric, and what do? We use jargon in the same way that we use jargon with petrol or diesel. And I think, in how many areas are we just falling into the same traps?
I think you're probably right. In quite a few areas, I'd say, jargon is a big issue for electrification. When we talk to MPs and peers, they have no idea what we mean when we say kilowatt hour, price pence per kilowatt hour. It's a completely new way of thinking, and it's really hard for drivers to do a mental calculation when they get to a public charge point and say, okay, that's the pence per kilowatt. How much am I going to charge? How much is that going to cost me? So I think jargon is definitely a big issue. It's interesting on. I think for electrification, I'm not sure we're listening enough to drivers and the experiences they're having generally. And
so those that have gone electric.
Yes, and actually, where are the pinch points? Where are the issues? I think this is a new emerging sector. Understandably, people are trying to get businesses going. They're trying to kind of return profits, and that doesn't necessarily match with what drivers need. So, for example, we talked about grid connections. Obviously, it's probably there's probably a better return if you go for rapid chargers in a place that's well served by grid connections. But actually, if you're a resident without a driveway, you want cheap charging and you want it to be accessible and convenient and easy. Accessibility of public charging is another one where it's not necessarily it's expensive to perhaps put an accessible charge point in. But if you don't do it, drivers can't use it. And I think that's one of my biggest kind of bugbears at the moment is it's great that we're seeing so many charge points go in the ground. How many of them are actually accessible to all users with disabilities? So I think perhaps the challenges are slightly different right now for when petrol and diesel, which was a fairly kind of bedded in technology by the time we sort of got to it. But in terms of emerging technology, I think it's really important people listen to what the drivers are saying and listen to what their experiences are and think about how they're going to future-proof the sector in a way that it works for us all.
Yeah. What do you think, Melanie? What do you hear and see in your data from drivers where their frustrations really are of those that have gone electric?
I think on the charging side, one bit of a bugbear of mine is just it's talked about almost how you did the public charging infrastructure as though it's a thing. And really, I want to move the conversation on about saying, there is obviously home charging, workplace charging, but there's also near home charging, which might be through pavement charging, it might be the lamppost charging or the pedestals. And that is just entirely different to a 300 kilowatt rapid charger that you might find in a fancy charging hub or motorway service area. And again, the destination chargers are 27 or 22 kilowatts that you might find at a hotel or a leisure park. And I think part of that is, that conflation of all charging into public charging infrastructure makes it very difficult for consumers coming to driving an electric car just to understand what it is.
What do we do about, possibly my biggest bugbear is that when you get kind of, not even electric vehicle evangelists, but just those of us that are trying to give a more positive story to consumers and general public about going electric and not to fear the public charging network. Quite often I'm joined by people on a panel who'll say in response to a consumer, no, it's easy to use the public charging network because all you've got to do is plan your journey a bit more. And we all need to stop for 20 minutes to, read the paper or grab a cup of coffee, don't we? And I'm thinking, no. I can already see the consumers switching off because they're thinking, no, I don't take 20 minutes out every time I go on a journey. I'm trying to get from A to B as quickly as possible. And I don't want, if I'm buying something that's more expensive than what I've got and I've got to plan my journey, why am I doing this? No. And I get slightly frustrated by that because I wish that more of us on the pro EV side had more of a dose of realism about what we were trying to convince consumers was acceptable and okay.
Yeah, and I think that is a really good point. And there's something I'm worried about is this just pure positivity without reality, and I agree with that. But I think if you think how the market's moved on, now most new cars have at least 250 miles of range, and most people, this is when again it's tricky, isn't it? Most people can charge at home, so most people will be starting a longer journey with a full battery. So for most people, it's not going to be a big deal, and they can they can do a quick top up in 10, 15 minutes. But then for some people, it's not like that. And I think, from a messaging marketing point of view, it's quite challenging.
Yeah. Have you got much data on men versus women? I'm interested if there are any differences the way women and men use your app or their experiences.
Yeah, I had a look at that ahead of the podcast. I've watched your No Driver Left Behind, read your No Driver Left Behind, so I could have got that in my background as well. But in terms of looking at the users of the app, approximately 25% of the users of the app are women, and they slightly over-index on interaction with the app, so they're more likely to be using Zapmap to pay for charging. So around 30% of all our payments are women. So I think when you look at the data, you've got your data, you find that most people who answer surveys, probably 80% of them are men. It doesn't mean that 80% of people driving electric cars are men, but the people who are answering the surveys.
What do you find, Vicky? Have you got any gender stuff?
Mel's right. The current data from our EVA England survey, which was at the halfway point 2 weeks in, was only 15% of survey respondents were women. And we know that that's not reflective of the number of women that are driving or the proportion of women driving. So it's really
women
hard.
listening, fill in those surveys.
Exactly.
It's really hard. It seems really hard to get to women drivers, even when you're out on some of the kind of women-only Facebook groups, making sure that they take time out to fill the survey in. It feels like a really kind of,
it's annoying because then we complain about not having a voice or not having our voices heard, doesn't it?
Exactly.
We could be helping ourselves maybe a bit more.
Indeed.
And what are you finding, Vicky, about drivers? And are we coming to the point with experiences of public charging and sentiment around public charging of if it's ultra rapid or ultra rapid, can we just stop talking about it? Is there any sense of
I agree with Mel, and I think I differentiate massively between I call it en route charging. In fact, that was the old term for the rapids. Is these are the chargers you should be using when you are commuting or you're on a long distance journey and you need a quick top up. They shouldn't be the chargers that you're using for everyday use, but you may have to if you're in an area where there aren't enough slower, cheaper chargers around. So I think I agree. We need to sort of stop talking about there are different types of charging for different uses. But coming to the user, it's going to be a long journey to get people used to it. And you're right, just saying to drivers, oh, it's great, it works. Actually, it does work really well if you have a driveway. And I think we should put that message out. They're easier to charge, they're cheaper to run, the vehicles are nicer to drive. I think we should be upfront that if you don't have a driveway, this is quite tough at the moment. And the drivers that we have in our membership who don't have a driveway are extremely passionate about their cars and they are willing to take a bit of pain because they believe in the transition. But when you're trying to get into the mass market, people don't care. And you're right, I've had conversations at the school gate. People don't want me to tell them that it's possible for them to do it. That there are cars out there that have this battery range. Why don't you just try it? They just want their lives to work. They don't have time to think about it. They want to get a car that they know is going to work for them. And we have to get to a point where people have the confidence that an EV is going to work for them for their lifestyle.
Yeah, I hear you. And speaking of the school gate, how do you juggle being boss of an association and a mum?
Very badly. No, I do it really well. Yeah. So I think one of the reasons I took this job was because it fit better with where we live and the children's schedule. I think when I was working in government, coming into London quite often, that's quite hard. We live an hour's train ride out of London, so that became really difficult. And actually, one of my daughters, she struggles with school sometimes, so actually being more available for her became more and more necessary. So actually, the great thing about my job is I do it mostly from home. I come in for meetings, but I can make my own schedule. It does mean that particularly evening events are quite difficult for me. I often have to run back from London for school pickup. So it's it is a constant kind of juggle, and trying to get childcare that only covers the after school period where we live is almost impossible. In fact, it is impossible.
Yes, I'm so glad I'm not still in that part of my life. I remember the pain.
Yes, yes. So and I think so that juggle is a constant factor. And again, I know sometimes you think, gosh, I could do this job so much better if I was just in charge of my time, but I'm not. So you have to try and squeeze it into the hours that are available to you.
One day. So we're on to final questions already, which is life lessons.
Ooh,
Melanie,
life lessons.
Come on, what life lesson have you got you can give us, share with us?
I don't know. I mean, I have thought about this, and I think the one thing I'd say, as being someone who's quite a goal-oriented person, is that you're never done. So it's never over. So never think, oh, you've got your first job, you've been to university, you've achieved this, you've had the children, or when this happens, when it's always going to continue. And it's a little bit like that with a product. You think, I've created a product, fabulous. But, the technology keeps going. The things that took you ahead are now just table stakes, and you've got to keep on innovating. You've got to keep on moving forward, both in your work life and your personal life. So I guess the life lesson is really try and enjoy the process. Be present and enjoy it, and not just think, when this happens, I'm going to be happy. Try and be present.
Yeah, a little more Buddhist about the whole thing. Thank you, Vicky.
I think for me it's I don't know if diversification is the right word, but work cannot be everything. And I think especially when you have children, but I think it's things like my swimming, you need something else that you're driven about. Like you should if work isn't going so well, you need something else in your life that you can fall back on, that you're enjoying and that you really like. And I think I see, particularly in my family, my husband's job, it can be all consuming, and I don't think that's great. So I think when I sort of speak with younger women coming up, it's just making sure that they have a good work-life balance, that they have other interests outside of work that they really enjoy and that they can fit into their life, and that can be their sort of their mental health support or fallback when work maybe isn't going in the direction that you think it's going to go in, or isn't perhaps going as well as you would like it to go.
Which happens all too frequently.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. It's been really great. Thank you to everyone for listening. Please do like, subscribe, and continue to watch and listen to this podcast.